Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah have agreed to a ceasefire after nearly 14 months of fighting. The U.S. brokered deal calls on both sides to remove their forces from southern Lebanon, and it will allow over 1 million displaced people in Lebanon and tens of thousands of Israelis to return to their homes. The agreement is to be enforced by international mediators, Lebanese government forces, and UN peacekeepers on the ground. Now, this deal marks a rare diplomatic victory for President Joe Biden, and it should help lower tensions across the Middle East, but it does not end them altogether. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has thanked the Americans for securing this deal, but he says that Israel is prepared to return to Lebanon and send troops in if it believes that Hezbollah is violating the ceasefire. More critically, the agreement does not include a ceasefire to end the devastating war in Gaza. Biden says he hopes to use the momentum from this deal in Lebanon to relaunch a last-ditch diplomatic push aimed at ending that war in Gaza. But already, Netanyahu is signaling resistance. He says that Israel will continue with its campaign in Gaza until it destroys the Hamas militant group. That does not bode well for Biden's diplomatic initiative, and it also signals continued uncertainty for the people of Gaza and the families of dozens of Israeli hostages being held there.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Tuesday he was ready to implement a ceasefire deal with Lebanon. He also said he would respond forcefully to any violation by Hezbollah, declaring Israel would retain complete military freedom of action. Netanyahu said his security cabinet approved the deal and he would now bring it to his entire cabinet. It requires Israeli troops to withdraw from South Lebanon and Lebanon's army to deploy in the region, officials say. Hezbollah would end its armed presence along the border south of the Litani River. Lebanon's foreign minister said the army is ready to deploy thousands of troops to the area, and the United States could play a role in rebuilding infrastructure destroyed by Israeli strikes. Netanyahu said a ceasefire would allow Israel to focus on the threat from Iran, give the army a rest, and isolate Hamas, the militant group that triggered war in the region when it attacked Israel from Gaza last year.
Yes, in terms of Gaza itself, I also think this can have a significant impact. Why is that? Because one of the things that Hamas has sought from day one is to get others in on the fight, to create multiple fronts, to make sure that Israel was having to fight in a whole series of different places. And as long as it's thought that that was possible, that's one of the reasons it's held back from doing what's necessary to end the conflict. Now, if it sees that the cavalry is not on the way, that may incentivize it to do what it needs to do to end this conflict. Now, we have two things that are essential. One is getting the hostages back, including the 7 Americans. But we also need to make sure that in order to end the conflict, we have a clear plan for what follows the conflict that enables the people of Gaza to move forward with their lives without Hamas and with Israel having pulled out of Gaza. We spent some time here, just as we have in past weeks and months, working on that plan, and that too is something that we'll be working on intensely over the coming weeks and talking to the incoming administration about. I'm not going to speak to what's in the agreement that is before Israel and before Lebanon. I can say as a general matter that, of course, by definition, Israel will always have the right to deal with challenges or threats to its security, just as any country has that right. But what I believe we have the possibility now of achieving is something that had not been the case up until now, which is the effective implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. Now, what we've worked on for many months now was getting an agreement between Israel and Lebanon on the effective implementation of 1701 that would result in the withdrawal of any Israeli forces in Lebanon, the withdrawal of Hezbollah to the north such that it couldn't threaten Israel, the deployment of the Lebanese armed forces, so critical to the security of the state, to southern Lebanon, as well as UNIFIL, and an oversight mechanism to make sure that the agreements were, any agreements are being carried out and fulfilled. So, if this is finally agreed, and if this goes forward, it is the answer to the problem that has bedeviled the area for a couple of decades.